1. I'm here to share a doppelganger experience from my childhood, and would greatly appreciate if others could do the same. It's been a good 14 years since this experience, and I'm still trying to form some kind of rational thought about it. I figure hearing about other people's run-ins with stunt doubles, as I've taken to calling them, might help me piece things together. I'll be the first to admit that I didn't have a great childhood. I faced a lot of abuse, was under a lot of stress, and cannot without a doubt rule out the possibility of stress-related hallucinations being the cause of the following occurrences, but I also can't bring myself to write it all off so easily. When I was 9, I stayed home sick from school. I distinctly remember that I wasn't actually sick, simply playing hooky to avoid bullying. Kids are cruel. As I did that a lot around that age, I awoke from a nap, turned on the TV in our living room and scrolled through some channels, when my mother suddenly leaned over the bar and stared at me without saying anything. I had been awake for a few minutes at this point, so I can't rightly blame sleep paralysis for all this. Now, whatever this thing was, it was entirely identical to my mother. It sounds weird to describe, but it's as if the only difference was that this thing pretending to be my mom had never felt a single emotion in its life. It was unsettling. It beckoned me, and I attempted to talk to her as I would my mother. She kept beckoning, refused to answer, and that's when I sensed something horribly wrong. The whole scenario felt disgustingly familiar, but I'll get into that later. Naturally, I started screaming at this thing to answer me. It just kept beckoning. I bolted, running out of the room and into the yard yelling for help. My mother, the real one, had been working in the yard and came rushing over. I told her what I'd just seen, and she soothed me with easy explanations that it must have been a fever dream. But thankfully stayed by my side the rest of the afternoon, as I was a nervous wreck. Now the whole thing was familiar because I'd seen this doppelganger before. I don't have the best memory in the world. I couldn't tell you a single other dream from my childhood, but I do remember one distinctly in great detail. I must have been 6 or 7 when I had it, just a few years before my waking life experience with this thing. In the dream, the doppelganger stood over my mother's sleeping body. I tried to wake her, somehow knowing that was the real her, though they both looked entirely identical. The other mother didn't speak, just beckoned. Not knowing what else to do, I followed, trusting blindly in the way only children do. She led me down a hallway that didn't exist in my home, and into a plain white room where she stood in the corner and watched, expressionless, as a hulking dark shape skinned my body with an axe. Now, I may have had a pretty fucked up childhood, but this was an abnormal dream for any child that age, abused or not. I feel now as if it was a warning. Things aren't always what they look like. I often wonder about if I had never had that dream, and what would happen if I hadn't followed the doppelganger when she beckoned me. Have any of y'all ever experienced anything similar? All doppelganger experiences I've read include them being strangely mute. Has anyone ever gotten one of them to talk? Why do they always seem to take the place of your most trusted loved one? Share your experiences here if you could, please. Even if I don't get any clues or information out of them, maybe they'll make me feel a tad less crazy. 2. I experienced some shit last night. It seems to be the same thing that was messing with me a while back. Let me preface this with some other experiences I had a while ago. I would hear someone or something calling for me. I would be home alone and I would hear my name being called for. Of course, I had the common sense not to respond because, well, I'm obviously home alone, and the thought of someone knowing I was home, all alone with no muscle to back me up, was terrifying in itself. I would see a shadow of a figure quite often. The figure would just linger around, mainly at night, when I was trying to sleep. Sometimes it would get really close to me, and the most horrific thing that ever happened to me is when it was holding me down on my bed. After all that, little old me adopted a cat from the Humane Society, and ever since then nothing strange has happened to me. I thank my cat for that personally. Now back to last night. I was getting ready for bed and I couldn't find my cat anywhere. She wasn't in my room, under my bed, or in my closet. I looked all over the house for her in every nook and cranny, but I couldn't find her. I dismissed it, as she usually takes naps in odd places. I closed my bedroom door and went to sleep. I woke up, what seemed to be a minute later, and I felt something pulling me off my bed and screaming. But it's not like an audible scream, you know. You heard it, but rather it was inside my head screaming. If that makes any sense. Anyway, I got really fucking scared and I went to my mom's bedroom and fell asleep in there. This morning my dad told me that he saw something lunging at him in the dark in my bedroom. I guess I took up all the space in my parents' bed, so he decided to sleep in my room. My dad said that he went to sleep and suddenly woke up and saw some shadow person lunge at him in my bedroom. I don't know what to do or what to think. All I know is that I want my cat sleeping with me always. 3. Let me introduce this with I am not setting out to prove anything. Officially, I do not believe in ghosts, ghouls, specters, apparitions of the dead, or any of that. But I did see something on the battlefield at Gettysburg. Something I cannot explain, or simply write off as fake or imagined. So when I was in 8th grade, my Christian school took our obligatory Washington, D.C. field trip. And on the bus ride to the Capitol, our school had arranged for us to stop at Gettysburg, a major battlefield during the American Civil War, and supposedly the most haunted site in the United States. I am a huge military history buff, so I was excited. My friend Caleb, however, was really into those ghost hunting shows. I didn't like them. They scared me. Now our school was super religious, like, God created man and dinosaurs to live side by side and vote Republican together. Religious, so Caleb was expressly forbidden from doing any amateur 8th grade ghost hunts. However, this did not stop him from taking pictures on his fancy new digital camera, and take pictures he did. From the time we rolled into town on our Greyhound bus to the moment we exited the city limits, Caleb was taking countless photos and videos, mostly out of the windows on our bus, as it was a cold, foggy, rainy day. That night, when we got to our hotel, Caleb would show me photos he took on his camera when he thought he'd found something. Most of the time I'd respond with, "Dude, it's just our reflections in the window," or "It's a smudge, nothing more." But there was a picture, and later a video I simply could not explain away. There was a picture of one of the cannons that are scattered across the battlefield, and next to it was the torso of a man. The picture was taken from inside the bus into a foggy, rainy day. So there could have been any number of reflections that could produce something like it. I wouldn't have given it a second thought if it weren't for the fact that this guy was clearly wearing a Union uniform. Being the military history nerd I am, I could clearly discern the big brass US belt buckle, the white leather canteen strap, and the canteen itself. Even the buttons were clear as day. I was impressed but unconvinced. It could be a statue, I thought, and still think sometimes. But there was no doubt about the video. The video was of horses galloping over the battlefield, spectral horses. You could see their rear legs and haunches, the lines of their backs, even the rippling of their muscles clear as day, and galloping across the field. We flipped. Of all the YouTube videos I've seen, of all the documentaries I've watched, I've yet to see anything quite as clear as this. It could not be written off as fake. So needless to say, we went around making believers of our entire 8th grade class. Cut to 8 o'clock the next morning. Mrs. Daniels, our uber-evangelical Christian teacher, storms up to us during breakfast. "So, I heard you caught a ghost," she sneers. "Let me see it then." So we showed her, naively thinking we'd make a believer out of her as well. She took the camera and promptly deleted the picture and the video, and proceeded to lecture us on how ghosts can't be real, because people either go to heaven or hell when they die. Anything else is the devil's work, and to seek out ghosts is to seek out the devil, or some such nonsense. It bummed us out for the rest of the trip that we let her delete those pictures. It still bums me out today, really. I have never seen anything quite so convincing as those images to this day. While I do wish we could have posted them online, I also doubt we would have had the impact on others as they did when we experienced them. You have countless people setting up ways we could have faked it, and no one would have really bought it. But that class all knew we were just 2 8th graders with a camera that happened to catch some seriously weird stuff. Makes me think that to this day, if you really want evidence for the paranormal, you just have to go out and experience it for yourself. Nothing else will ever be as powerful or as convincing. 4. Went on holiday to West Wales with some of my workmates and the girl I was seeing at the time to an old mid-18th century farmhouse. One of the ladies who was with us is a Wiccan, I think, and kept telling us about the people in the house and how she could see or smell things. The place we worked, she would always make comments about people or objects. We worked in a museum, that's an entirely different story. We always used to think she was a bit loopy. I couldn't shift the feeling of being watched in this farm, and it was worse when alone. I put it down to me drinking, and it being an old house so things were bound to creak. One night we were all sat out on the patio, and another member of our group started counting people around the table. Turns out she had seen someone at the window inside looking at us, and was trying to work out who was missing. One of the nights we were there, I woke up, and in the darkness felt someone watching me. Like someone stood just out of visibility, looking at me. After moving my feet to check it wasn't sleep paralysis, I turned to look at my girl and she was eyes wide open, not moving much. Next morning she admitted she had felt that someone had been over her watching her sleep, and thought it had been me. I sleepwalk. But when she opened her eyes, nothing there, but she still had the feeling of being watched. The last night, we got drunk and went to bed. I woke up to the room being illuminated. I thought we had got drunk and fell asleep with the lights on, as we are prone to doing. Once again, feeling like I was being watched. However, it was brighter than I knew the light in the room was. LED bright. I rolled over and flicked the switch to turn it off, and on came the room light. As the room light came on, our bedroom door, which was closed, opened and slammed shut. I actually locked our door that night and nothing else happened to us. Next morning the Wiccan asked us what we had done, because the person in the house was angry with us. She said that maybe it had thought us rude for locking the door. It turns out that later in the night, after we had locked the door, other people had their wardrobes and doors and things opened and slammed, as well as windows rattling. All of the kitchen cupboards had also opened and slammed in the middle of the night. On the day of our departure, the people we were renting from came in to start cleaning and we asked them. The house had been in their family for generations, and quite a few family members over the years had died in the house. Rural Wales, miles from anything. They said they had never had a party, who hadn't mentioned something strange happening. 5. So a little background. About a month ago, we moved into a new apartment that was freshly built a little over a year ago. We are the first renters to live in this unit. My husband started a relatively new job a few months ago in cemetery sales. We have a 1-year-old daughter. Our first strange occurrence happened after about 2 weeks or so of living there. I had given my daughter a bath in the master bath the night before, and went into the bathroom the following day, and noticed that all her bath toys, about 10, were arranged in such a way that looked like the arch of a rainbow in the tub. I asked my husband if he did this, and he did not. I thought nothing more of it, and chalked it up as a coincidence. Soon after that, we started getting motion detection notifications every day at 4:30 p.m. on our phones from our baby monitor. It would go off for about a minute and takes a couple pictures. I opened up the app on my phone and watched the live stream and saw nothing moving or out of the norm. I figured maybe it's a glitch. The next couple of days following, I played around with the blinds, leaving it closed one day and opened the next, only to get the same notification at around 4:30 p.m. One morning my husband had gone to work and I was home with my daughter. I sat her in her high chair and began feeding her oatmeal. Soon after, she suddenly pointed at a random area near the front door, smiled, then waved with both hands. She normally only waves when we tell her to or when someone is waving at her. At this point, I felt there was something strange going on that I couldn't explain, so I went over to my parents' house and explained to them what was going on. My parents are Buddhist, and suggested having a monk come over on Saturday when we're free to bless the place. I agreed. Next day I'm sitting at work, it's 4:30 p.m, and my baby monitor went off consecutively for about 3 minutes. I received about 30 notifications and photos. 3 nights ago, I asked my husband to go to the car to get food out that I forgot to bring inside. Meanwhile, I began putting my daughter to sleep with her bottle. While I sat there in the dark, I heard a sound coming from her walk-in closet. I stared at it, afraid that there may be someone in there. Then I noticed the lighting in her room changing, like a shadow going across her window every now and then. So I sat there, staring at the baby window to see what it was. Nothing. Soon as my daughter fell asleep, I hear my husband open the front door, coming back inside. I walked over ready to tell him to go check her closet, but before I could, he said to me, "I think something just followed me out into the hallway, outside." I asked him what he meant, and he explained that he walked out of our apartment, into the hallway and down the hall, when he felt like someone was behind him. So he casually turned around and quickly saw a small figure crouched behind a corner, head tilted, eyes white. When he did a double take, it was gone, but he walked about 10 to 15 feet back around the wall it was behind, because he thought maybe it was a neighbor or something. Needless to say, no one was there. Yesterday, my husband was off from work, and I didn't start work until 2 p.m, so we decided to go for a hike in the morning with our daughter. Soon as we left the apartment, we started getting notifications from the baby monitor. It went off nearly every minute we were gone. Got over 180 notifications. When we got home, camera stopped going off. I put my daughter in her crib for a nap, walked over to the window, closed the blinds, and started to walk out of her room, when I noticed a balled-up dirty diaper that we left that morning on the floor in front of the crib, turned over, or roll on its own. At this point I thought, what the fuck? I really just saw that happen. So I softly kicked the diaper with my foot, wondering how that was possible. No explanation, so I noped out of there real quick to take a shower and get ready for work. I left my phone on the bathroom counter in front of me, so I could check the time, and started to routinely do my hair and makeup. When it was time for me to leave, I couldn't find my phone anywhere. I searched all over the place and finally found it in one of the drawers in the bathroom. Am I losing my mind? This morning, my husband left for work, and not long after he left, the monitor started going off again every minute. I grabbed a couple things, including my daughter, and left. Notifications stopped once I left. I'm now at my parents' house. We've talked to a Buddhist monk and told him what's going on. He told us that we'll need 3 monks and that they'll be there on Saturday. Because of where my husband works, I asked him if any of his other co-workers ever experienced anything strange, and several have in the past and/or currently still are. It's only Wednesday, and I feel like I can't even stay alone in my apartment. Edit. Yesterday, as I was getting ready to leave work at 10 p.m., I got an email from my husband for me to log into Google Chat. I logged in and he sends me a few messages saying that there was something going on at the house. I asked why he wasn't using his phone. He said because every time he goes to text or call me, his phone shuts off. On the drive back home, I call him and get through to him, and he explained that after our daughter fell asleep in her crib, he kept the monitor streaming on his phone with the volume turned up. He heard sounds coming from the monitor, so he went to her room to check and she was fine, hasn't moved. So he lay down on the floor of her room and continued to quietly listen to the live stream on the phone. Through the live stream, he kept hearing shuffling sounds on his phone, as though she was moving, but when he popped up to look at her, she hasn't moved. He heard sounds again, but his phone suddenly completely shut off. The phone had been charging and was at 40% when it cut out. When he turned it back on, it was at 3%. This was when he plugged his phone in and tried calling and texting me, but his phone kept crashing on him, so he jumped on the computer. I remember reading comments from you guys saying not to give it attention, so when I got home, my husband began to show me on the computer the sounds he could hear coming from the monitor, but I told him to turn it off, and that we were going to play some music instead and clean up a little. I don't know if it did anything, but doing that seemed to have made me feel better. I spoke with a co-worker that is familiar with the main monk that is coming over on Saturday, and she told me that she should be able to tell if we have an entity, what kind, if it's nice or not. We'll be going back there tonight. This time our daughter stays with us. I'll update if anything happens. Thanks for all your responses. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 59. Thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, I was listening back to some of the audio I was recording there, and my voice is still a bit rough, but I don't think it's too bad. It doesn't sound too much different than normal. Maybe just a teeny weeny bit more raspy, but I think it's okay overall. But I'm going to keep the outro a little brief. I'm going to rest up on Thursday. Not going to talk at all. I'll try to resist the urge to sing. Sometimes it's hard, you know, you just burst into song if you're listening to music, but I'll try and curb the impulse, and to make sure my voice is good to go so I can get the weekends videos recorded, because I do like to have my weekends free whenever possible. Okay, with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.